So, it's a great pleasure for me to introduce the next speaker, and I'm going to get a little bit personal here, because he's a great friend. He was the best manager I ever had. He also has very important role in the cyber ecosystem and scenario in Israel, because back in the beginning of 2006, he was the first, as a SVP in RSA, he made the first important cybersecurity acquisition when he acquired my startup, Sayota. Later in RSA, he promoted me to be the general manager and head of the product line that emerged from Sayota. And he's an amazing person and a great speaker. So with a great pleasure, I would like to invite Chris Young, the CEO of McAfee.
Thank you, Michal. Good morning, everyone. And thanks for including me in Cyber Week again this year. It's great to come together with many of the thought leaders in the security industry this week at Cyber Week. But when I look at the industry today, it seems that we're drowning in a rising tide of cybersecurity threats and challenges. And the numbers tell the story. The number of companies being attacked and successfully breached, it's on the rise. The number of targeted attacks on the rise. The amount of data that's being exfiltrated as part of cyber attacks also going up. The cost of a breach in today's world, higher than it's ever been. In fact, in its public filings, Equifax reported just in the first quarter of this year that their breach from 2017 will cost them upwards of $1 billion to remediate. And we all know there's more targeting and more targeted attacks that we're seeing in our industry across the board, in our supply chains, in our organizations, and the like. But we're also, as Donald recently just said here on stage, we're awash in a sea of data. In fact, the amount of data that we store in our data centers is rising by 60%, compounding annually, and predicted to do so, through the next 5 years and likely beyond. Most of that data and most of that information is in the cloud. And some of it, increasingly, will be weaponized and used against us to prevent the progress that we're making in cyber. And everyone here at Cyber Week is working to ensure that we do not drown in that sea of threats. And this week is about balancing the equation, leveling the playing field against our adversary in the cyber threat landscape. And so I'm honored to be among you again this year at Cyber Week, to be a part of the conversation, because it's a very important conversation that we're having. And I would argue that it's increasingly about ways, our conversation and our work is increasingly about ways that the cloud, data, and advanced analytics can be an important part of balancing that equation with our adversaries, raising our game so that we can be better at what we do in our profession. So I often like to look beyond. If you've ever heard me talk, I like to use some analogies and metaphors for inspiration in cyber, because we haven't figured it all out ourselves, and we can draw inspiration as well as insight from looking at other examples. So at the risk of repeating myself, I would say we're drowning, and this time it's literally. No city is more representative of the challenges of flooding than Venice, Italy. It now floods 60 times per year, with increasing severity of what it's called acqua alta, or high tide. So the city, in response, has undertaken a project. And the project is to protect this lagoon and try to preserve the history, the rich history of the city itself, by engineering seawalls beneath the Adriatic Sea at the entrances to the lagoon. They then use, in conjunction with those walls, data modeling to predict when high tide will happen and flooding is likely possible. 78 gates will rise in unison to protect the ecosystem in Venice. Now, the story here isn't the gates. It's the data science and the data analytics that leads to decisions to take action against Aqua Alta in Venice. And that's the lesson we can learn. Data elements like water pressure, atmospheric levels, wind direction, all coming together to deliver, to be analyzed and deliver the right kinds of insights so that the city can take action to prevent itself from being flooded. And it's just a small example that I look to that we can learn from in our industry, because in this case, there's dozens of inputs of data that come from disparate sources that must be brought together to be analyzed and derive insights so the city can take action to prevent itself, to literally prevent itself from drowning. And its insights is where I want to take the conversation here today at Cyber Week, because in cybersecurity, we all know that we have no shortage of data and information available to us in our work. Just at McAfee alone, we respond to nearly 50 billion threat queries per day from nearly 1 billion sensors that we've got deployed worldwide across our enterprise, government, and consumer users of McAfee products. To put it in perspective, we'll respond to 700 million threat queries in the time that I'm up here and talking to you. 20,000 new threats identified per hour. And that's just McAfee. If you think about magnifying that to the entire industry and what we're doing across the cybersecurity space, the numbers are staggering. Yet, still too many defenders who use our capabilities are drowning. They're drowning in data and drowning in attacks. Here's an example. We all know this one. The average large security operations center could be responding from anywhere from tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of legitimate alerts in any given day. Drowning in information. Difficult to know what to do next if you're in that environment. But unlike Venice's story, where flood data is all brought together to create insight, too often in our industry, data is trapped in silos. Think about it this way. You get data from your network devices, your endpoints, your gateways, your cloud environments, and the list goes on and on. Disparate sources of information where we create different formats, different contexts, making it difficult to understand how it all comes together. Many organizations are getting external threat intelligence, whether they're buying it or getting it from government or partners in their industry. Some of it's useful, some of it is not. It's important here, however, to contrast insights from data capture, because the two aren't the same. They could be linked, but they're not necessarily the same. So let's spend a few minutes on that. Data capture is actually becoming a lot easier in our industry with newer products like EDR tools. But the problem we have today is we're now capturing more data and spending more effort, in some respects, to extract that signal from the noise levels that we're seeing across our environments. Much of that's driven by the amount of systems and information we now have to traverse to truly understand what's happening in our environment. We're also capturing, in too many cases, a lot of the same information from the same domains. Just on endpoints alone, we use data loss prevention tools. We deploy user behavior analytics agents. We're using EDR to capture threat intelligence information. All of this kind of looking at different sorts of problems from slightly different angles, yet capturing a lot of the same information, creating a situation where first responders, defenders, are having to manually bring this information together in order to get their jobs done. The alerts we send through SIMs from our traditional security devices, they don't often tie closely to macro-level threat intelligence that we're getting in our environment. However, the cloud, together with intelligent analytics, can help us evolve. They can help us get to a place where we can better balance the equation against our adversary. This, I believe, is our collective opportunity in our industry to drive insights that deliver the next level of security capability and response times for our industry. By fully tying together what's happening in the global threat landscape with what's specifically going on in a defender environment. Today, no individual organization is effectively tying those data elements together, from contextual alerts you might get in an EDR platform to broader campaigns that are happening in the wild. ultimately allowing organizations to harness the power of insights to change their future. This is the future that I see not only for McAfee, but what I see for the industry. If you see in Venice, it's a game changer. It's been able to protect that city from flooding quite a long time ago. Imagine if you could do this. If you could understand at any given point in time, if you're a defender, if your specific industry is under attack, or you knew where in your region an attack was originating, whether you're the target of a directed attack in your environment. Quickly, if you knew one of those data elements, you'd also want to understand where did the attack originate? Where did it originate in my environment? Increasingly, defenders are going to want to know, how do I rapidly adjust my policies and my controls in a way that I can quickly harden my environment, change my configuration of my security tools to respond? But I got to be able to do that across my network, across my endpoints, in my gateways, in my cloud environments, to do that very effectively. And moreover, if you could team humans with advanced analytics and machines, increasing their ability to quickly adjust defenses and respond to attacks that matter the most, that's a game changer for many of us. This is the next wave of innovation that I see in our industry to adapt to the present and alter the future outlook for our cyber defenses. Late last year, I committed McAfee to harnessing the power of our billion sensors combined with the force multiplier of a lot of the partners whom we work with in the industry to start to drive towards this model of insights, to converge the macro threatscape with what's specifically going on at a micro level in the customer environment, to not only help understand for many of them where is patient zero from a machine perspective in their environment, but whether their organization might be patient zero. Using the power of cloud and analytics, we can help defenders better trace attack patterns that they see across their environment, in their supply chain even. This is the next phase of our cybersecurity journey, collectively across the industry. The rising tide of data can lift all boats in our industry and help us navigate our way forward. And like all cybersecurity journeys, it bears a striking resemblance to those taken by cities around the world that are facing the threat of flooding, of their embankments and their perimeters. Going on offense against a very worthy adversary, in this case, weather patterns in our planet. About that project in Venice, it's actually named MOSE, or Moses in Italian. It's the right name. After all, the ancient leader's most famous act was to lead his people to freedom, to protect them. Powerful promise of freedom. Even as 50% of the world, or more than 50% I should say, of the world today is connected and online, but under a surging wave of attacks and cyber threats, with a flood of weaponized data, systems turned against us, I remain optimistic. I remain optimistic that we'll sort out the challenges of climate change on our planet, but also use the rising tide of cyber data to our advantage, not to our detriment, by leveraging the power of the cloud and advanced analytics to help us balance the equation. And I believe that the promise of the next great patent or invention to deliver on this is here today, potentially in this room, certainly around at Cyber Week. And it's inspiring to be among those who are going to unlock the potential of our capabilities, unlock the potential of data, advanced analytics, and our great security capabilities to drive the next level of innovation and level the playing field against our adversaries. To protect tomorrow's descendants against and all nations together. Because I believe, ladies and gentlemen, together is power. Thank you all very much, and thank you for having me here this week at Cyber Week.